This is episode number 145 of the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast, one of the shooting world's biggest gun talk programs. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent T. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. First, before we get started, let's have a quick chat about our sponsor, 1791 Gunleather. Centuries ago, the original patriots of this country fought and died for promises they protected in the Constitution. Chief among those promises was the right to bear arms. Now, generations later, 1791 protects that right and our firearms. Makers of the 2020 Holster of the Year, every 1791 holster is a mastery of craft and function, customizable to any firearm you require. 1791 Gunleather provides quality and service in the way only an American company can. Please visit 1791gunleather.com for more information. Today, we've got a fun episode as I talk to Special Assignments Editor Roy Huntington about that mythical worst-case scenario where you have to hide one single rifle someplace, and it'll be the only gun you'll ever have. As always, Roy has a surprising choice he'll share with us. Now here's Roy Huntington as we talk about the last rifle they'll ever pry from our cold, dead hands. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning, sir.
Well, I gotta say, you sound a little snuffy. What would that be?
I know. Mr. COVID got me about 3 weeks ago or so. And actually, I sailed right through it, but I've got a little bit of a cough left over.
Yeah.
And I think the vaccination and boosting and all that, and living a good life and drinking only good bourbon.
There you go.
Pays dividends.
Well, you were saying you kind of got that radio voice now. So, let's try that. This is CNN.
This is CNN.
Wow. That did sound good.
James Earl Jones doesn't have anything on me now.
When we're done here, you got to record a few voiceovers for This is the Guns Magazine podcast.
It's so silly. I was talking to myself in the shower this morning, and I was thinking, maybe I could have a new job now until this heals up. So
there you go. There you go. Well, I appreciate you talking to us here on the Guns Magazine podcast, even though you're a wee bit snuffy still. But you actually suggested this topic, and it's a kind of a fun one. Yeah, everybody says, if you can only have one gun, but let's go a little bit further. Let's say it's a situation where you really literally can only have one gun. And that raises some interesting questions, and we're going to dive into it here and now. So Roy, you came up with a couple of scenarios why that would even be a thing.
Well, as I am a little older, I find myself, I'm thinning my gun herd. And
shame on you.
Every time I do that, I stop and I think, well, will I ever need this? Will I ever want this and stuff? And need and want are two different things entirely. Right. So, and as my needs get distilled, I realize that a smaller and smaller gun collection actually makes better and better sense, but it prompted me to think, though, as you said, if you really could, by some quirk of weirdness happening in the world, you were only allowed to own one gun. For instance, I was in Botswana and they're only allowed to own 5. So everybody there has a big bore rifle, a smaller bore rifle, a shotgun, a 22 rifle, and then a 38 pistol. Mm-hmm. And to everybody, that's what they all have. And so all those guns accomplish the jobs that they all need done in the separate things.
Yeah.
So, and if you could only get it by with one gun, they would have to make that decision. So that's what I was thinking, but it's a couple categories. It's number one, are you only allowed to have one gun because of laws or something? What would that be? Are you only going to have one gun because it's the end of the world and you have to protect your family now? Or you just need one gun because that's all you really need anymore? What would it be and why? So let's start with which one of those do you want to start with?
Well, I was kind of framing it in terms of, as we call this episode, from my cold, dead hands. So I was thinking more external forces are limiting you to maybe a single I was focused on rifles. Truly, I will say out of the gate, I think the shotgun is the most versatile one gun you can own. It doesn't do anything other than wing shooting the best, but you can make it work for a whole bunch of variety of roles. But I was thinking in terms of rifles. So if there was a situation where I could only figure out a way to hide, say, one rifle, I would go as simple as possible with the whole idea of a single shot rifle. And yeah, a bolt action is pretty simple too, but if it's a situation where you're truly against the wall and maybe there won't be parts available and things like that, it takes a little more mechanical acumen, shall we say, and equipment to repair even a simple bolt action. So that's why I would say the single shot rifle, because it's about as simple as it gets. Even if it breaks, somebody like me could fix it, with a file and probably some JB weld. And I would go in .308 Winchester because there's billions and billions of those rounds floating around. There's lots of reloading stuff floating around, and it does everything. You can take really big game with it if you're, careful on your shot placement. It's certainly a one-shot stopper if it's a two-legged type of varmint. And if you've got to, defend the chicken house against the rabid weasels or whatever, it's way overkill, but it'll also do the job. So that was kind of where I was thinking of this.
I think you took it in a direction I didn't think about it. And I think you're exactly right though, because as you cast about the third world, if somebody there has a gun, it's almost always a single barrel shotgun. Mm-hmm. Like picture an old H&R break top kind of a thing. And you're right. You can fix it with a bent nail and a coat hanger. Mm-hmm. And they do, because I've seen the guns, and they've got nails, just cross pins, and they've got, filed on,
I may have been guilty of that in my past.
Yeah. And actually you really bring up a very good point though. And I think in our world, you'd be hard pressed to do worse than like an H&R handy rifle. Mm-hmm. Break open, iron sights, 223 to 308, I suppose. Huh? Yeah. I would probably tend to lean more toward the 223 side of things, just because
that's a great choice too. And that's what it boiled down to, those two for me.
Yeah. A little lighter to carry around, and there's a gazillion rounds out there. And you can shoot a deer with them. I've shot a deer with one,
sure.
So if you need to, you can protect yourself and shoot that weasel, by golly. And no, it's a really interesting thing. You would be able to do it. I would not do a shotgun only because, like you say, it would do it. But if somebody is more than 50 or 75 yards away from you, you pretty much have to hide.
Exactly. Exactly. And in that kind of scenario where you literally only have one gun, there's probably going to be people that fit that category lurking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and even in a way like they do in Africa, where it's a subsistence, mm-hmm. thing, they have a single barrel shotgun because that's how they feed their family, and so if it was something like that here, to where because of some quirk of fate, the world's not ending, but the government says you're only allowed to have one gun from now on, what would that be? Mm-hmm. And I think you could do a lot worse than your idea, which is a good single shot, and you could probably make like a 20 gauge single shot, H&R type gun work if you could learn your way around slugs, right. Figure out where the gun shoots. Because I remember for a while, I don't know if they still do it or not, some of the companies were making bolt action rifle barreled slug guns.
Right.
And at the time I thought, wow, this is before the advent of the bolt action 50 caliber, counter sniper Barretts and all that kind of stuff. And so at the time, I remember as a policeman, I thought, man, that's a really interesting cop rifle, because, you shoot some 500 grain solid copper 20 gauge Sabo, slug out of a rifle barrel. Well, we were testing them, and we were getting 1.5 inches and 2 inches at 100 yards.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, gosh, that's rifle accuracy. So if you had something like that, I mean, now suddenly you have a 150 yard or 200 yard shotgun, but then you also have a shotgun to shoot a partridge if you want to.
Well, those were big among my buddies in the deer hunting realm. And I would say 5-ish to 10-ish years ago, before in my state we finally decided, well, maybe rifles are okay, and we're not going to shoot busloads of nuns and orphans driving by. But prior to that, a lot of guys, and they were going down to 20 gauge because it wasn't quite the rainbow trajectory arc. So yeah, the bolt action 20 gauges, of course the recoil was less, and there's no doubt on downrange it will take care of business. And they were getting some pretty decent groups using, like you said, the copper sabots and some of the real high speed, low drag kind of things. And it was kind of all the rage among my buddies there for a while. So it's certainly a valid platform.
It's funny how it kind of went, not to segue, but we had an old, I don't know, like a 58 Chevy or something that we had on the range that we used to shoot up all the time. And so, but it had old school, the real thick steel chrome bumpers.
Oh yeah.
Right. And those were real. Right. And, I shot the bumper with one of these 20 gauge copper sabots, and it cut a quarter size perfect hole right through it. And we shot some of the steel rims in it. Holy cow, this thing is, but then we went on because Barrett invented the 50, and I guess we completely forgot about that stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, then I'm going to agree with you that the idea of a single shot, I'm kind of fortunate too, because I'm enough of a sort of hobby gunsmith guy that,
well, you build whatever you need.
Yeah, I know. I was actually, that was
Gatling
part of,
gun
I know, I was thinking about this, was that I thought, you limit me to one gun? Yeah, right. We'll see about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, actually, we should, I don't know if we can do this or not. I was just thinking about it, but it'd be an interesting video because I could go, they're all over YouTube, but I could go to Home Depot literally in probably 15 minutes in the store. I could buy enough stuff to then come outside and probably in the back of my pickup truck, make something that would shoot like a single shot 20 gauge shotgun shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, but I don't know if we could ever do that or not. That's another story. We should talk about that.
We have to run that one by legal, but I would think, you can build guns without serial numbers for personal use. That's legal. That's Joe's ghost gun fears.
Oh yeah. And it's perfectly legal to do this, and you can't sell it, or anything, but that's not the point. I think it's just an interesting exercise. Plus it does teach you how do guns work, but okay. So we both have agreed, which frankly surprises me. And it was mostly because of the point you made, which is limited to one gun, not because it's the end of the world, not because, the Martians are landing, not because of who knows what, but what is the most versatile one gun possible? Yeah. I'm going to go with you, a single shot, simple, rifle of whatever caliber you're comfortable with.
It's really interesting when I love having these discussions of pick the single thing, because like you, my collection's not as big as yours, but I've got a pretty sizable collection and they all do something different. But you often stand in front of the gun safe and go, what if I could only grab one? And that's what's fun. Yeah. But I think the other side of that too is it makes you consider your situation and your needs. And that's something that a lot of times we don't think about. We try to fit the tool to the situation. You never do that in woodworking, do you?
I can't tell you the number of times I've used a screwdriver for something you shouldn't have used it for,
or justify. Yeah. I need a $40,000 planer to build that address board for the front door.
Right. Well, there's an old adage about beware the man who only owns one gun, and I actually knew a guy like that, Frank Robledo. He was a Hispanic gentleman who lived next door, and he had an old beat up Mauser 98 30-06 with a 4-power Weaver scope on it. And that was his only gun. Yeah. And I took him shooting a few times, just to exercise it more than anything. And you know what? The son of a gun, he hit everything he aimed at. We went jackrabbit hunting one time and he shot jackrabbits out as far as I could see them, and, and I went with a different gun every time, and he used to look at me and say, why would you do that? Just have one good gun, and I kind of learned a lot right there. So what we're talking about is really have a gun. In other words, you're going to have to solve whatever problem you have with the gun you have in your hand. Yeah. So if you have that versatile gun, I've had a bunch of those handy rifles. I've had them in, from 22 long rifle up to 45-70. And All right. Frankly, I think one of the most useful ones I had was one in 44 Magnum.
Really?
And I used to shoot. Spear used to make these little shot cartridges or capsules. I would load my own shot cartridges for them. And then, of course, 44 Special, 44 Magnum, and it had a short barrel. And it was like, gosh, it was a pretty darn versatile gun, you know? But of course, that's too practical and you need to have more. And so,
well, in a totally different world, I just did this of fitting the situation to my wants. I was working, my son needed some brake work done on his vehicle. And I've got an old floor jack that I bought 25 years ago when I couldn't afford anything. And it's too small and doesn't work half the time. It's just it turns getting a car up on the jack stands just an ordeal. And I was at the store picking up some brake cleaner and that stuff. And I saw that $270 nice floor jack. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy that. So I've used it exactly one time for, about the minute and a half it took to get his car on the jack stands and take it down. But it really made my life easier, and I'm happy. But now that I walk past it in the garage, I'm like, that's a lot of money sitting there waiting to be used. But we do that all the time with guns and tools and all those other guy toys we like.
I think especially with guns and tools. Although I will say the older I get, it's things change. Like I was at Grizzly Tools not too long ago, which is the mecca, for tools. They have a showroom in Springfield, Missouri, and woodworking, metalworking, lathes, milling machines, tooling, you name it, they have it. It's amazing. And it was really interesting because I went through the whole store and I looked at everything they had, and I actually left and didn't buy anything that I thought, there were things that I thought, well, I would want that, but do I really need it? And it's taken me until here I am almost 68 years old to get to where I would listen. So look, we've established the fact that we both think a single shot rifle. I'm going to go with a 223. I would also agree with your 308 idea. I think that's an interesting, because they used to make something called accelerator rounds,
right?
Which was, remember those 308 rounds, 30-06 subcaliber sabos,
yep.
223 bullet. So I'm sure that technology still is out there someplace. So that's cool. So then let's go to another category, and this truly is kind of the end of the world. The hordes are out there. The zombies are
eating brains, and
we're just a bunch of silliness. I don't envision that. I know a lot of people maybe think they do, but what would you have as your gun then? So, Brent, what gun would you have then?
Now, see, that broadens things up. I'd probably, again, well, I don't know. You know what, Roy? I'm going to punt. I'm going to punt on second down, and I'm going to throw it back to you while I consider that, because I got a lot of stuff here, and, that kind of gets down to the which do you grab,
Right. And so, frankly, it took me about 2 seconds to make the decision. It was really surprising. And that it would be an AR platform.
Yeah.
And I have a really lightweight, short pencil barrel gun, flat top, iron sights. I have 2 lights on it. As 1 is none and 2 is 1.
Yeah.
And I have a fixed rear buttstock, an old military buttstock on it. And I've got a bag full of magazines that, and a bottle of water and another flashlight and a big heavy folding knife in it. And that goes over my shoulder. And I think that's what I would do, because that's what I would grab here.
Yeah.
And I think they're easy to fix. They're a bit like your single shot rifle. Honestly, that. Right.
Yeah.
They're amazingly easy to take completely apart and fix. And so parts are everywhere, ammo's everywhere, magazines are everywhere. And, out to 400 or 500 yards, you'd be pretty safe, and up to toe-to-toe distance. I remember Clint Smith used to say, it was something like, because he has a class where you clear rooms with a rifle.
Right.
And people would always say, but they'll grab your muzzle. And then he said, yeah, and there's going to be one big dick dance for about 2 seconds when they do. And I used to always laugh at that. It's like, you're going to grab my rifle muzzle? Yeah. Let's see how that works out.
Exactly.
And so that's what I would do. And this is a really lightweight gun, like I said, and so it's pretty handy. I keep it handy here. It's been known to shoot at a coyote every once in a while, so
Yep.
I wouldn't be happy about having that be my only gun, but that's what it would be.
There's what I'll throw one out for discussion, but I would probably have to admit that I would grab one of my ARs, and because it's kind of the same thing. I've got magazines loaded. I've got my quote unquote bug out bag, or, fighting bag, whatever you want to call it. With that, I would feel fully prepared to deal with whatever. Having said that, a 308 Scout rifle is not something to dismiss out of hand. I know, I think maybe the younger generation that cut their teeth on the AR platform, would say, well, you've only got what, 4 or 5 rounds and you load them one at a time. And yeah, but it is really handy. And unless you're maybe in a true military situation where the hordes are coming at you, you're probably not going to be laying down suppressive fire. So it's that idea of, one shot, one hit kind of thing. So I guess maybe that appeals to the rifleman side of me, that I can carry that gun. It's pretty much bulletproof. It's a bolt action, and I can take probably more accurate shots because just of the nature of the platform. But anyway, I'm admitting, truly, I'd probably grab an AR, but the Scout rifle sitting there wouldn't be dismissed out of hand.
I would not feel unarmed. I think the only challenge would be if you did have multiple opponents for some reason, because you'd have to really, load and know how to manipulate the gun.
Right.
Although every time I watch Quigley Down Under, I think, maybe a Sharps rifle would be okay.
Well, I've got to say, I was also realistically, if I'm in my truck, what I'm going to grab, because it's the rifle in my truck. My Model 94,
That's it. Yeah.
I've got them, cruiser ready. The tube's loaded. There's nothing in the chamber. I've got ammo on the buttstock, and I've got some extra ammo stashed away. And as I've said, if you've not heard this discussion before, I like it because A, nobody can argue with it ballistically, and B, it's not as costly as an AR platform. So theft does occur from vehicles. If something would happen and somebody would steal it, I'm out a couple $100 instead of $1,000. And C, and truly the biggest reason I carry it, you pull out an AR today, people are going to get their panties in a wad massively. You pull out a lever gun, most folks are going to say, "Oh, how quaint. It's John Wayne's gun." Well, that's cool. Can I see that? And you're not going to get folks potentially as having as much heartache. So anytime you pull out a gun, there's that possibility. But I really feel like it's not going to be such a big, oh my God moment, because in the public's mind, an active shooter has an AR and all these magazines and that. And if you show up looking like that, you become an active shooter in their mind. You pull out a lever action rifle, and I guess there's a better chance you're not going to look like the active shooter. Maybe I'm crazy. I haven't tested it out and hope I don't have to, but that's what I would do in my pickup truck.
I think you make perfect sense. And I've told this, it was on a gun crank show. I used to camp out in the high desert on BLM land. Mm-hmm. And one day I had an AR-15 over my shoulder just because there was a lot of illegal aliens and stuff and bad guys out there.
Yeah.
And the BLM police came up and they made a big deal about put the rifle down and step away from it, and all that stuff, which is fine. Well, then another time I was out and I had an old Model 92. I had a Rossi Model 92 and I flung over my shoulder, muzzle down, and I'm strolling around and they came up and said, "Hey, how you doing, man? Say anything interesting? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm kind of kicking rocks around and, oh, hey, nice old rifle you got there. Can I look at it?" And so it had exactly the effect that you say. It's interesting. I saw it was a group of people in someplace, Oregon or something, and they were, when all the awfulness was happening in the rioting, it was a group of guys in a small town were basically protecting their town. And so it was just a bunch of regular guys, but some of them had chest packs on, with some bandolier kind of things, and but all of them had short AR-15. So they all, they were all standing around and And it was a little intimidating. I mean, because I thought, it's like, well, are these good guys or are these bad guys? Well, they were good guys, right? Except it was scary, right? And then I saw a similar situation. It was in someplace in Montana. It was another group of guys, and 3 or 4 had lever guns. A couple of guys had pump shotguns. There was a couple of AR-15s, but it was a completely different tone.
Yep.
It was like, this is a group of citizens protecting their town, right?
Yep.
And it was subtle, but it was pretty darn obvious. But you're right about the lever guns. I like short, cut down lever guns, and I have them here, and I have used them for things. Put a deer down, if you get a sick deer in the backyard or something. And when you said scout rifle, I was thinking of a rifle I have, and I have one of those M1A scout rifles from Springfield Armory,
right? A
little short, M1A,
yeah,
and man, I have to say, you're exactly right. There is not a problem in the world you can't solve with a 20-round box magazine full of 308 ball ammo and a scout rifle like that.
Yep.
The only bad thing about it, and why I wouldn't go in that direction, is that it's heavy, and the ammo's heavy. So that's really the only reason. But yeah, it's hard decisions. So AR-15 of some kind would be my last ditch, grab it and defend my family gun.
Yep. Well, I think we've raised a lot of good points here. I really like this discussion because it's, of course, fun to go back and forth, but it really forces you to think about your preconceived notions, your needs, what you believe you need versus maybe what really is important in your situation, and how you're going to handle these kind of situations. Because people tend to think of the zombie horde or, total societal breakdown, and it's Mad Max and all that kind of stuff. But once you get out of that kind of movie trope, you start to think, okay, really, if it's just a lot of lawlessness, how am I going to handle that? If I'm out in my vehicle, do I need a rifle, and how would I employ a rifle and not get myself in some serious legal hot water? And it really, really makes you consider all these factors that maybe you don't when you're just kind of driving down the road thinking about, yeah, I'm going to put another AR in my truck and I'll have 52 magazines and be ready to rock and roll.
Well, it's like I talk to people and say, well, I have 20,000 rounds of 223 ammo. And it's like, I always say, well, have you ever actually picked up a case of 223 ammo? I mean, and tried to carry it 100 yards? It's like, really?
Yeah.
So I would like to talk about this third category.
Oh, okay.
Which actually there's a fourth category. I don't know if we dare talk about a handgun, but the third category is, what general use gun would you have if you could only have one general use gun in your real world? So my real world is, I live in Missouri. I've got 25 or 30 acres here. I have critters I need to take care of sometimes. There's a possibility I would have to defend myself against something. So if I could only have one gun, what would it be? And that one was a really interesting. I thought I was really going to agonize over this, but I didn't. I decided on it almost instantly. And would you like to know what it is?
I'm dying to know.
Everyone will think I've lost my mind, which is a short trip. But some years ago, I bought a CZ, I think it's a 527 American, they called it. And it's a full Mannlicher stock rifle. It's this real small, like 3/4 size bolt action 5-shot magazine fed rifle. And it's in 222 Remington, which is interesting.
Okay.
Right. And I put a good scope on it, my optoscope, and the darn thing shoots less than a half an inch with anything that I put through it. And there's virtually no recoil. It's got a set trigger system, so you can set the trigger. And basically, if I can see it,
you can hit it.
Yeah. And I have hundreds and hundreds of cases and thousands of bullets and enough primers to last me the rest of my life, probably. And a pound of powder will load a gazillion, of these cartridges. And the 222 was originally a bench rest cartridge. And so it is inherently accurate. And I've had similar rifles in 223, and this gun just shoots rings around them. It's unbelievable. So I was thinking, if I could really only have one rifle, I would choose that one because I can load for it. It's reliable. They're simple. It has a set trigger, which I like. And if you can see it out to, 300 or 400 yards, you could pretty much shoot it. And if you need to shoot a deer, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that. I mean, I'm not going to go big game hunting probably ever again the rest of my life. And if I did, I would just borrow the guide's rifle. I'd say, can I borrow your rifle for a minute while I shoot this moose?
Yeah.
If I go to Africa, I'm not going to fly with guns. I'm going to borrow whatever gun is there.
Yeah.
So realistically, this is all I need. And it's light and it's easy to carry around, and you could protect yourself with it if you need to, And isn't that odd?
That is odd.
I know there was a part of me that said, oh, I would probably do the AR-15, but I thought, well, no, because I want to, it's pleasurable too.
Yeah.
In other words, if I have one rifle, it might as well be a fun gun for me too,
Yep.
And so these are very pretty guns, and they, like I said, they're beautifully made and they're accurate. And that's what I would do. It's really weird. You want to know what the second in line was?
Of course I do.
And much to my surprise, another CZ. It's their 22 Magnum semi-auto, which I think you shot when you were visiting.
I was going to say, I wondered if that was going to be the number 2.
Yeah. It has a good Meoptiscope on it. And again, it's a 1-inch rifle.
Definitely.
And 22 Magnum, it's you could shoot a deer in the head at 100 yards and it would put it right down.
We were ringing 8-inch plates at 100 off your back deck with no problem.
Just easy peasy.
Yeah.
And could you protect yourself with it? Absolutely. Light some miscreant up with a 10-round magazine, a 22 Magnum.
I wouldn't stand there and take it.
No, it solves that problem.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that I did why I didn't choose it was because I can't really reload for that.
Right.
And so unless you have a pretty good ammo stash, which you probably could,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was that. And I didn't go to the third level, but the third level would probably be back in that single shot rifle category that you were talking about. Yeah.
Well, closing this out, though, I think there was one concept that I found interesting. We both talked about a lot and didn't really get into it, but accuracy. Accurate guns, it's important. The gun has to be accurate, and the loose nut behind the gun, i.e. the shooter, you've really got to make sure you can hit what you're aiming at, because even though you're carrying 42 magazines and you can lay down suppressive fire, in the real world, only hits count, and you can't miss fast enough. So I just wanted to get that in there because, that's one of those things, especially guys. We know that we were born, we knew instinctively how to paddle a canoe, drive a stick shift, and shoot a rifle accurately and hold your liquor. And it's the rare individual that can do any one of those things well, let alone all of them.
Well, that is probably the primary appeal of this little CZ222 is it's so elegantly accurate. And I think it was Townsend Whelan said only accurate rifles are interesting.
Yeah.
And it's true. But if this gun shot 2 inches, it would not be on my radar.
Right.
Which is silly because that would probably be just perfectly adequate, but every once in a while, I'll take a groundhog here at 150 yards with a headshot with it. And it's like, holy cow, it's an unusual rifle that can do something like that, especially lightweight like these. So, so what would you choose?
Oh boy. I might go back to the shotgun at that point, just because you can do a lot of things with it. Yeah. Beyond 100, they're more or less safe, but I figure at that point, I at least keep their head down. You got 500 grains of angry lead, at least coming a foot or 2 or 3 nearby you. That's going to make you reconsider. And if you continue forward, then I do own you. So, and the rest of the time.
Remember though, this is an end of the world gun. This is your sort of
carry around.
Just, have it. This is my, have you met my favorite gun? Right. Here's my favorite gun. What would that be in a long
Probably
gun?
My 870. because I've carried them. I've told many times in law enforcement, we were the last shotgun generation, and I had to push on the earth at the academy if I couldn't field strip it in, 0.7 seconds. So that's truly one of those guns I feel completely intimately connected to. And when I get it in my hand, it just feels natural and I feel like I can do anything with it. And I realize there's advantages, disadvantages to pumps, but for me personally, it's more a confidence thing than anything else. It's if you give me a shotgun, I don't even care what it's loaded with. I know I can do lots of different things well with it, and I won't fumble with it. I've used it under some pretty stressful situations. So it may not be the optimal choice for even most people, but for me, it instills that confidence, and I just know that in my hands I can do whatever I need to do with it. So maybe a different criteria there, but that's just it's almost like my magic wand. I can do almost anything I need to with that particular gun.
I don't disagree with you at all. I remember when Federal came out with their tactical buckshot with a cylinder bore riot gun at 25 yards. It keeps all of the buckshot on a torso target.
Yep.
And it's like, well, good Lord, why? And then they made some, I can't remember what it was called, but some special slug, accuracy style slug.
Yeah.
And our old bead front sight, I don't know, but they were 18-inch barrel,
probably,
guns. Well, a 50-yard torso, it was very easy to keep all the slugs, centered in the torso.
And there's nothing that will stand up to a slug.
No,
even large bears will not stand up to a slug if you do your job.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, could you stop shooting me with that, please?
That hurts badly.
I know. Okay. Well, I think we've really broken some interesting new ground. I would like to end this with a real quick, literally kind of shoot from the hip thing. Okay. I'll even go first to give you a chance to think. One handgun. What would it be? And I know what it would be for me. It'd be a 5-inch Smith & Wesson, either, I don't really care, KLN frame, I don't really care, in 357 Magnum with adjustable sights, round butt. There you go. Because there really is not a job you can't do with that gun, period. You shoot a deer, okay. Shoot a bad guy, okay. Load it with a hard cast 180, shoot a bear, if I had to. Right?
Yeah.
And keep somebody's head down who's 200 yards away from me. You bet we could do that.
Yeah.
Carry it concealed. Yeah. I have suspenders that'll keep my pants up. I mean, it's very versatile. I used to lean toward a 44, except it's just ammo's heavy, and all that stuff. But a 357, a 5-inch, because I shoot a 5-inch better than a 4-inch, and you don't really need a 6-inch.
Yeah.
So a 5-inch really makes a big difference. And oddly enough, very famous gun writer Skeeter Skelton, that was his choice.
Yeah.
A lot of people say single action, same basic thing, Taffin's perfect packing pistol,
Yeah.
But that's what it would be. I almost went with a 1911 just because I can fix them and, and everything. But nope. But the revolver's more versatile. Plus, you can shoot shot loads in it.
Yeah.
And they even make subcaliber adapters if you want to.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say this is a total cop out. I was going to say the exact same thing other than just a 4-inch. I don't have a lot of experience with 5 inches, and my first issued sidearm was the 4-inch Model 19 was Parkerized, and you can do a lot of stuff with 38s, so you don't deal with recoil, but you can always have full house loads, and it was the choice of going to a 44 because you can do a lot of different things, 44 specials and things like that. But yeah, I think the 357 is really the peak of the whole, where everything connects: carryability, concealability, terminal, ballistics, just it all, that really hits the sweet spot, and it's hard to improve upon it.
I agree. Lately I've tested some 357 Magnums for videos, and it sort of reminded me, I wouldn't want to carry that with 357s every day, but you have that option. But Federal, I shot some 180 hard cast, flat nose, lead Federal 357 Magnum ammunition. I think it was about 1150 or something like that out of these guns. And boy, it was a fire breathing dragon.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just muzzle blast. I mean, this thing really delivered the goods where you needed the goods delivered. And that's when I realized, just good Lord, this is really a versatile package. And I think 38 wad cutters in my 5-inch gun would be what I would carry around in it usually. And they're almost like shooting 22, but that'd be fun. So I think we did pretty good. We covered a lot of ground and not a lot of time. Well,
I'm certainly interested to hear what the listeners have to say, because there's about 200 or 300 and some million opinions on this topic, I think, just in the United States. So if folks want to drop us a line, you can reach me at editor@gunsmagazine.com, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment down there, because we certainly, this is one of those things, if you want to start kind of a friendly argument, get some shooters together around a gun counter or a deer camp and have this very same conversation. Well, Roy, it's been fun as always, and it's fun when we talk because we don't plan this out at all. We literally hit the record button and away we go. So it's always fun, and I'm still a little confounded by the full stock sporter, but hey, if that's what you're confident with, go for it. But anyway, thanks for talking to us.
It was a lot of fun. And I think if someone decides to make a comment, since we've already answered all these questions with the best answers possible, they'll probably just say what you guys said.
Probably.
But hey, right. I'll keep an eye on comments too. And I think if you do too, and so we'll wade in.
Okay. That sounds good. Well, I'm glad you're on the mend, and we'll record a few voiceovers here before you get better.
All right, buddy.
As always, Roy was a fun guest, and if you like this episode, I'd suggest you check out our episode number 139, Cop Practical Jokes, where Roy and I tell some semi-off-color true stories from our police days. Or check out episode number 143 from 2 weeks ago, titled You Don't Know Jack About the Weaver Stance. We got a lot of positive mail on that one. And on that same subject, if there's a topic you'd like to hear us discuss or somebody you'd like us to interview, drop me a line at editor@gunsmagazine.com. As always, you can find us on your favorite podcast directory, YouTube, and at gunsmagazine.com. And while you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at AmericanHandgunner.com, AmericanCop.com, and our numerous special editions available for sale on our websites and at Amazon.com. Right now, the hot ticket is the DIY Guns Home Gunsmithing Projects, number 30. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it, and I'd sure appreciate it if you would mention us on your own social media and maybe tell one or two friends. Our audience of like-minded gun folks keeps growing by leaps and bounds, but I'd sure love to have a few more join us each week. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.